In a normal world, a nominee to head up Health and Human Services wouldn't lie during a confirmation hearing. Hell, in a normal world, a nominee to head up Health and Human Services wouldn't be an avowed anti-vaxxer. But we don't live in a normal world, and we did see RFK Jr., within minutes of taking the stand, lie during his confirmation hearing.
Did you say that exposure to pesticides causes children to become transgender?
No, I never said that.
Okay, I have the record that I'll give to the chairman, and he can make his judgment about what you said.
RFK says, no, I never said that. Well, here's what he said.
The frogs that were exposed to these very low levels or modest levels of atrazine, I think 60 of them became sterile, and the remaining 10 or 10%, I forget what the number was, they were all male. They started out male. 10% turned female and were able to produce fertile eggs. So you've had a demonstration now in an animal model of these dramatic gender transformations in frogs. Now, is that applicable to human beings? Sometimes animal models, oftentimes animal models are applicable to some process that might happen in human beings.
Certainly sounds like that was the implication, but the lies continued from there. Here's what Senator Bennett confronted him with on the COVID vaccine.
So I'm asking you, yes or no, Mr. Kennedy, did you say that COVID-19 was a genetically engineered bioweapon that targets black and white people, but spared Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese people?
I didn't say it was deliberately targeted. I just quoted an NIH-funded and NIH published study.
Did you say that it targets black and white people but spared Ashkenazi Jews?
I quoted a study, Your Honor. I quoted an NIH study that showed that
I'll take that as a yes. I have to move on, I have to move on.
Here's the comments in question.
COVID-19, there's an argument that it is ethnically targeted. COVID-19 attacks certain races disproportionately. The races that are most immune to COVID-19 are because of the structure of the genetic structure, genetic differentials among different races of the receptors of the ACE2 receptor. COVID-19 is targeted to attack Caucasians and black people. The people who are most immune are Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese.
Now, he says that he quoted a published NIH study, only small problem, that's not what the study says. The study in reference not only doesn't state those conclusions, it also doesn't mention Chinese people. So when RFK says under oath that he was merely quoting a study whose conclusions, in fact, do not comport with his claims, he is once again lying to the Senate committee. Another example, he was asked by Senator Warnock if he'd compared the CDC to Nazi death camps, which of course he denied, but the senator brought receipts.
You have compared the CDC's work to Nazi death camps.
Senator, I don't believe that I ever compared the CDC to Nazi death camps. I support the CDC. My job is not to dismantle or harm the CDC. My job is to empower the scientists if I'm privileged to be confirmed.
So you retract those statements?
I'm not retracting it. I never said it.
Well, actually, I have a transcript
of me saying that it's a Nazi death camp.
Let me read your words. It says that the institution CDC and the vaccine program, is your description of their work, is more important than the children that it's supposed to protect. And you know, it's the same reason we had a pedophile scandal in the Catholic Church. And another statement to me, this is like Nazi death camp. I mean, let me finish. I'm just reading your words. I mean, what happened to these kids? 1 in 31 boys in this country, their minds are being robbed from them.
Yeah, I was not comparing the CDC to Nazi death camps. I was comparing the injury rate to our children to other atrocities.
In fact, this isn't even the only time that Kennedy's made this comparison.
They're going to have the right to compel unwanted medical interventions on us. The Nazis did that in the camps. in World War II. They tested vaccines on gypsies and Jews.
In other words, he was yet again caught lying to the committee. Another example, RFK is well known for his culpability in the American Samoa measles outbreak. Here's what he had to say on that topic.
I went there, nothing to do with vaccines. I went there to introduce a medical informatics system that would digitalize records in Samoa and make health delivery much more efficient. I never gave any public statement about vaccines. You cannot find a single Samoan who will say, I didn't get a vaccine because of Bobby Kennedy. I went in June of 2019. The measles outbreak started in August. Oh, clearly I had nothing to do with the measles.
Now, first off, RFK saying that he went to Samoa in June of 2019, but that the outbreak didn't start until a couple of months later, isn't exactly helping Kennedy's point here. The fact that he was there in June and then the outbreak started in August, he says. But beyond that, here's what happened when I interviewed RFK several months back and asked about this exact issue. I do want to talk about one instance in Samoa. In 2018, there were 2 children who died from a measles vaccine. That was after a nurse incorrectly mixed the vaccine with a muscle relaxant, so it was human error. The prime minister then banned MMR vaccines after that. Your organization, Children's Health Defense, praised him. You then visited in 2019 in a trip that was arranged by an anti-vax influencer named Edwin Tomasese. You met with another anti-vax influencer named Taylor Winterstein. So anti-vax sentiment spread across the island, and later that year, Samoa was hit with a measles outbreak that was the express result of a decline in vaccination rates. I believe only 31% of Samoans were vaccinated at that time. In the year leading up to 2019, there were 0 cases of measles in those years. In 2019 proper, though, there were over 5,000 cases and 83 deaths. So do you recognize how perpetuating vaccine skepticism or especially propping up anti-vax influencers can lead to such devastating health consequences?
No, the best evidence, first of all, I had nothing to do with the drop-off in vaccination rates in Samoa.
Well, the AP did an interview. Sure. Let me just say the AP did interview folks who were working on the Samoan measles response, and they said that the credibility that you gave to the anti-vax population, the anti-vax forces, did have an impact. Well, those were people who were in Samoa.
But there's plenty of data on the drop-off. The vaccine was banned before I went to the country, so the drop-off that you saw did not change between the time I left the country and the time the measles epidemic. So that's one thing. The other thing is that the deaths that occurred, the best evidence shows that the deaths that occurred from measles that year were a result of a defective vaccination.
But that's not what the evidence says. The evidence says that it was actually the evidence says that it was actually 2 vaccines that were mixed with an expired muscle relaxant.
You know what? No, that is propaganda.
So I get that he wants to absolve himself of all responsibility, but even the Samoans themselves are able to acknowledge the negative impact that he's had, meaning RFK is lying to the Senate committee when he says that he had nothing to do with the measles outbreak in Samoa. Now, clearly there are plenty of examples of RFK Jr.'s lies, but the larger issue here is that Kennedy himself would serve as a rubber stamp for Trump's most extreme positions, key among them abortion. Senator Hassan pointed out the fact that if RFK was willing to flip on something so purportedly long-held as his pro-choice views, then that doesn't exactly bode well for him defending any of his positions if he's challenged by Trump.
I am really heartened to see that one area where we agree on is on women's reproductive freedom. In your own words, it's not the government's place to tell people what to do with their bodies. You said that, correct? Yep. Mr. Kennedy, in 2023, you came to New Hampshire and said, quote, I'm pro-choice. I don't think the government has any business telling people what they can or cannot do with their body. So you said that, right?
Yes.
Yep. When was it that you decided to sell out the values you've had your whole life in order to be given power by President Trump?
Senator, I agree with President Trump that every abortion is a tragedy, that we can't be a moral authority in this country.
Right, but that isn't what you said back in New Hampshire in 2023. My question is exactly when did you decide to sell out your life's work and values to get this position?
Senator, I agree with President Trump that every abortion is a tragedy.
So what you're telling us, just to be clear, because my time is limited, is that regardless of what you believe, regardless of what values you have, if President Trump tells you to do something, You're going to do it.
And that right there puts on full display the problem with confirming somebody who exists to serve as an extension of Donald Trump. It doesn't matter what RFK's positions have been on the issues, because what he's showing here is that he will ultimately just defer to the extremist positions of dear leader. Trump doesn't want somebody who's competent at HHS. He wants someone who's compliant. RFK Jr. is broadcasting in plain view that he's just the guy for the job.
Before you go, just a quick note, if you'd like to see more of my content, which is always free of advertising, sponsorships, and paywalls, please make sure to subscribe to this channel using the subscribe button right here on the screen. And if you'd like to support my work even further, you can grab a copy of my instant #1 New York Times selling book, Shameless, available for sale right now. That link is also on the screen. Thanks so much for watching.